Trooper Yuri Bukhenik took the stand. This guy was a Marine and held leadership positions. And my first thought was, well, he's not going to be a pushover for anyone. And I had to take a step back here. And I owe it to you to disclose something. And that is, I have a bias. I have a lot of respect for military and for law enforcement. And I know that in any large cohort, in any profession, you're going to find people who aren't honorable, who make mistakes, who have weaknesses, who do bad things. And you're going to find people on the opposite end of that continuum. And as much as my rational brain knows that, as much as my training and experience has taught me that, I'm aware that I have this bias under the surface. So I need to let you know that, and I need to be aware of that myself. Bukhenik was the supervisor on call on January 29th in the morning. Proctor was also on call until 7 a.m. The on-call schedule was done a month in advance. One of Bukhenik's supervisor is Tully, and you've heard Tully's name before. He said he got a call at 6:44 a.m. from HQ advising there was a body. A body. John O'Keefe wasn't pronounced until a couple of hours later. At 6:27 in the morning, O'Keefe was transported to hospital. So at that point, at 6:27, they're still hoping that if they can warm him up, his heart will start again. Then at 6:45, John arrives at the hospital, according to a report authored by firefighter Flamati. And the first entry of his vitals, or about his condition, on the hospital records is at 6:47 a.m., and he was not pronounced until 7:50 a.m. So why is it that the police are being told a body if the thinking is that he's still alive? And Proctor was due to leave at 7. And I know it's not the same everywhere, but if you have 15 minutes left in your shift, you've got your fingers crossed, hoping that maybe if they delay for 15 minutes, the next crew on shift will take it, especially on a death investigation, because you're going to be awake and working for hours and hours when you're expecting to be off in just 15 minutes. Bukhenik said he called Proctor and told Proctor to contact CPD. Then he said, I was advised of the circumstances. And so he said he started shoveling out. Well, when was he advised then exactly? And by whom? Are we to assume it was Proctor who called him back? He said he met with Proctor at CPD at 9:15. Well, why there? Well, why aren't they going to the scene? Okay, maybe they need to speak with people at the station and get some background information and all of that. I could see that. But why then doesn't he go to the scene? And if he's already at Canton Police at 9:15, why hasn't he ordered CSIs out to the scene? Why is that scene not being secured? And let's say for a minute that it's true that the police on scene decided, hey, this guy is not really going to live, so we're going to treat this as a homicide. Sometimes that happens. Then again, why do they not properly secure that scene and wait? And if they've called the state police at 6:44, why did they abandon the scene and not wait for the state police to take over the scene? This is all off. The witness said at 8:22 a.m., he was still clearing his driveway. He said he met Proctor at the Canton Police Department parking lot. Proctor was sitting in his vehicle out in the lot, and they walked into the station together. He said they went to the detective division and talked to people, and they spoke with Sergeant Good. He said his conversation with Good lasted 25 to 30 minutes. That's a long conversation to have have initially, especially when you consider that the conversations that took place at the scene weren't that long. So what are they talking about for half an hour? He said he learned that the victim had been transported to hospital. He learned that the accused had also been transported to hospital. And at this point, she wasn't the accused. From Canton Police, he went to the McCabe's place. What? Why? I would expect that from Canton PD, he would go to the scene or get crime scene services to take care of that scene, and the detectives could go to the hospital and see what they could learn. Why the McCabe's? What was his rationale for choosing that place? He said that he and Proctor rode in the same vehicle together to the McCabe's. He said while he was at the McCabe's, he spoke with Jen first, Matt second, and Brian Albert third. He said they were interviewed separately. Well, there was a little bit of contradictory testimony from this group of people when they all testified as to where they were during the time that the others were being interviewed. None of them, however, said that they were interviewed together, but, they wouldn't. I want to know, were Brian Albert and Jen McCabe talking together after she was interviewed and before he was interviewed? So while the troopers are interviewing Matt, where were Jen and Brian? Were they together and talking about what she'd told the troopers? Or were they separate, in which case neither one of them can say where the other was and whether or not they could overhear? Bukhenik said he went to the hospital ER, and he's not specific here as to when or what order. Did he go from the McCabe's to the hospital? Anyway, he said he was taken to the victim's room. He said the clothing was on the floor at the foot of the bed. And the way it sounded was that it was just in a pile at the foot of the bed. And normally it goes in a bag or it goes on a chair in the patient's room. Even in the ER room, they have places to put that stuff. Throwing a pile of clothes on the floor is going to get in the way if you're frantically working on a patient trying to save their lives. So I found this odd. So as he continued his testimony, it became clear that the clothing was in one big pile on the floor, according to him. And he said they bagged the clothing into evidence. Well, I want to know who bagged the clothing. Was there a photograph taken of that pile of clothing on the floor, showing exactly where it was and the state it was in? And there's no excuse these days to not take a photograph. They all carry cell phones. Now, it's a big pain in the butt for other reasons to get that photo from the cell phone into evidence. It's because of the rules of best evidence and all of that. But, there are no rules in this case anyway. So, not hearing about anyone photographing that yet. He said the clothes were soaking wet. And he said the clothing pile consisted of plaid boxers, an orange t-shirt, blue Lucky Brand jeans, a belt, a gray sweatshirt, and one black sneaker. So because the clothes are soaking wet, they have to be dried properly. So when they bag this clothing into evidence, I want to know, did they bag each piece separately and then put that into a larger bag and then get it to a lab where it could be dried properly immediately? Because as it sits there wet, evidence is being destroyed. Evidence is being degraded, so it needs to go as quickly as possible. He said that from the aroma and from what he could just see with his eyes, that there was vomit on the clothing. Well, I'm not a doctor, but I do know something about TBIs. And I'll tell you, with a head injury, people do vomit. But you know what else that means? That means, depending on where that vomit was, Mr. O'Keefe may have been upright. Depending on which articles of clothing that vomit was on, he may have been upright at the time he vomited. If he was unconscious and vomiting, it wouldn't run down his clothing. It would be concentrated in the upper area. The way he said it was he collected each item and then he put it in a large bag. So I'm not 100% clear on whether each item was bagged and then all the bags were put in a large bag, or whether he just put it all in a large bag. I don't know. And so where are the photographs of that collection taking place, and who collected it and all of that? He said he did notice there was only one sneaker, so he had the EMTs check the ambulance for a sneaker. Well, it wasn't there. He says he usually wears gloves when he touches anything, and this is different from saying he did wear gloves this time. So I don't know if he did or he didn't. He said once an item is in a bag, it's sealed and stored. So most forensic units have different ways of storing different pieces of evidence. Some things need to be stored in paper. Some things need to be refrigerated. All of this. So we're not hearing about exactly how these particular items were stored. Maybe they'll get into that. He said if that bag is opened later, it's logged at sign out and the tape is cut and then it gets resealed and initialed again. And that opening it would be noticeable. And that's the point of that tape that you see. And you see the initials right on the tape so that if somebody cuts that bag open and breaks that seal, it's obvious. When you reseal it, you try and use a different color of tape, and then you reinitial that new tape that you put on there. He said there are 2 evidence officers and only they have access to where the evidence is stored, except for the unit commander, and that would be Tully. The witness said Trooper Proctor has no access. He said once an item is taped and sealed, the items are logged in and stored. So let's see the logs. I want to see the logs of when all this evidence that Trooper Proctor didn't deliver until March 14th. When was that logged into evidence? Lally asked him what he observed about John's condition. And the witness talked about bruising to his eyelids, and then he launches into giving medical testimony for which he's clearly not qualified. And of course the defense objects. And Lally kept trying here. The witness said that in death investigation, the DA's office has jurisdiction, and there it's the state police who would be assigned, and any unattended death has to be investigated. He said he's worked on scores of investigations involving head trauma because Lally still wants to get this out. So the witness was able to say that John's face had swollen. There was discoloration of the eyelid. He said there was a cut to the nostril, and he said a very small cut over his eye. You know what? I don't think there's any doubt that John O'Keefe had a head injury, but that doesn't tell you how he got the head injury. And Bukhenik is testifying to what he could see on John's face. Remember, there was a huge gash on the back of his head. He had what looked like a contre-coup injury. And Lally keeps trying to elicit medical testimony, and he should know better. Finally, he was able to get the witness to say and get the judge to admit that Officer O'Keefe had injuries consistent with a subdural hematoma. They talked about abrasions to John's right arm, and he was asked, what does abrasions mean? And he said, it means blunt force and friction. Stick a pin in his word abrasions here for a minute. It's going to come up again. He said the abrasions were concentrated around the elbow. He said he attempted to speak with the accused at the hospital. Well, attempted to speak sounds like there was some reason he couldn't, that maybe she refused or something. But it comes out, well, the reason he couldn't is because she wasn't there anymore. So maybe he went looking for her. It's a little bit different from attempted to speak. Anyway, he learned she was in Dighton, and so they went to Dighton. Well, hang on a second. Where did the evidence go? Where did the clothes go? He just talked about being at the hospital and gathering this evidence. Did they take the evidence to Dighton with them? Did they go back to headquarters first? I mean, what happened with the evidence at that point? Okay, so we're going to Dighton. Then he presented 4 items of clothing. This is the bag. Look closely at the top of this bag. This bag contains only the gray sweatshirt, but we know from the testimony from the lab that the gray and orange sweatshirts were bagged together, and the lab has no reason to lie about that. And look here at the tape, and you watch. You're going to see only 1 layer of tape there. Well, if that bag had been opened and closed again as was necessary, why is there only 1 piece of tape on there? So let's watch. He's going to open this bag. You see that? And I'm going to stop this. Do you see any initials on this bag? On this tape? I didn't see any initials on the front either. Something's not right about this bag. So, they're going to give him scissors. So watch for initials. There's no 2 layers of tape. See, look at the front of that tape. Well, actually, that would be the back. There's no initials on there. See, no initials anywhere. 1 layer of tape, even though we know there should be more. Why is this bagged by itself when we know it came to the lab together? And if that shirt and the orange shirt went to the lab together and now it's separate, I mean, how do we know what state anything else was? Okay, look here. You can see two different kinds of tape, which means it was opened and resealed at least once here, which is expected. I'm not seeing initials on this either. Maybe I just can't see. And here's the orange shirt. And the cuts are from medical staff having to cut that off. And I believe what you're seeing is the back of the shirt there with that big picture. Okay, here, whoops. So look at this. I'm going to go back a second. Here. Oh, wrong one. Not sure if those are initials or not. Or if that's... Okay, a single shoe. That's in great condition. Did he just get new shoes? Now I want to see the treads. Look at that shoe, looks brand new. So next, I can't say for certain, so 100%, but it doesn't look like there is more than one layer of tape here on this bag. I also don't see initials, but it's hard to see. They could be there and I'm just not seeing them. So here are the jeans. And look at this. If that is blood or vomit, then that means that John O'Keefe was upright after he was injured. It's always sad to see their clothes. This poor guy. And there's the belt. Wish we could look at that really close up. Oh, and as for the boxers were in that bag, and they said they weren't going to show that. And at first I thought maybe they don't want to publicly show that, but that they would show it to the jury, just out of respect. But turns out they didn't go into evidence. When the judge asked about what from the bag, if the whole bag is going into evidence, Lally said, not the boxers. And I want to know why. That's part of his clothing. It should go into evidence. Everything he had on should go into evidence. And if that evidence doesn't produce anything, well, okay, fine. Bukhenik testified that all the clothes were in one bag, still not clear whether it was bags within a big bag. Anyway, he said they were laid out on butcher paper and allowed to dry. And I'm wondering who laid them out. They were laid out. He doesn't say who. And why is forensics not testifying to this? I mean, he could testify to the procedures. Are we going to hear from crime scene services to say, yes, we laid out the butcher paper. Yes, we dried it out in this particular manner, etc., etc. And then he said they were packaged. Well, who and when? And he said they were packaged individually, except the pants, belt, and the boxers. So what he's saying, the pants, belt, and boxers, just like you saw just now, were packaged in one bag, but everything else was packaged individually. But we know that at the lab, the orange shirt and the gray shirt came in one bag. And that is why when that scientist did the scrapings to get the debris, she put the scrapings from the orange shirt and the gray shirt together in one package to be analyzed because the shirts were already mixed up in the bag. Now, this witness is testifying, oh no, we put them in separate bags. I don't have any reason to think that the person at the lab was lying. And at the lab, They are so strict about their protocols, about how things are labeled and tracked and all of that, that if I had to choose between believing this witness as being accurate and believing the lab witness as being accurate, I would go with whatever the lab person said, because to me it seems more reliable. I'm not saying that this witness is lying. I don't know that. I am saying I don't believe that this is reliable. And he doesn't say he witnessed it being packaged or anything like that, just they were packaged individually. Well, by who and when? Lally asks him, at any time, were the plastic pieces placed in the same bag? Well, he says, no, absolutely not. First of all, of course he'd say that. And secondly, maybe he's saying that because he knows they shouldn't be, and that would not be protocol, right? He's a supervisor. He knows that is not how you do things. That's not how you package or handle evidence. You never would do that. So it could be that he's saying, no way, we would never do that. Well, did he see? Did he see it being packaged? Did he see where it went? Then he said, Lieutenant Mello from Crime Scene Services went to the hospital to document the clothing. Well, this is a little bit confusing in terms of timelines. So is this after the detectives went to the hospital and left? Did they just leave the clothing there in that state? Or did they package it? Tell me. It's not clear from this testimony. Lally's bouncing around, not going through it step by step here. So, okay, so Crime Scene Services goes to the hospital. So who exactly picked the clothes up off the floor? And who brought the clothes to the lab? Who did all these things? When we looked at the bags from the lab, I didn't see a Lieutenant Mello's name on anything, did you? On those clothes? Could I have missed that? Lally asked, how many times did Crime Scene Services respond in respect to this case? And the witness says 4, 5, 6 times. How do you not know that? And you know, as an investigator, he is allowed to refer to his notes and his reports on the stand if he needs that to remember. Why doesn't he do that then? And if it was a suspect being vague like this, well, everybody'd be hollering. They'd be all over it. He talked about the 2 members of Crime Scene Services responding on January 29th to the hospital, and they took photos of Officer O'Keefe. These photos were not shown to the public. Again, this witness testified to swelling of the eyes, and he said about the marks on John O'Keefe's arm, this is what he said. He said, parallel lacerations, abrasions on arm. And that one grabbed my attention. He was very clear that it was abrasions, and abrasions to him means blunt force and friction. And now he says lacerations and catches himself and corrects that. Then he testified that on January 29th, he left the hospital to go to Dighton. He said he advised Dighton police because they were going into their jurisdiction. And that is a thing that you should do. If you're going into another jurisdiction, it's a courtesy. And often you can get the police in that jurisdiction to assist. He said he called them on his way and said they would be there. And this is really vague as to times. He said it took 45 minutes to an hour to get there because of the weather. He said he parked and waited for Dighton police. He said he arrived at around 2:30 p.m. and waited for an officer to arrive. And I'm looking back at my notes here, and I don't see a time when they arrived at the hospital. So these timelines are fuzzy. And with times and timelines, you know, this should be written down. Officers, including detectives, have notebooks. And often those notebooks are subpoenaed because they contain little details that the report might not contain. And sometimes they don't contain something that a report does contain. So it is common for the defense to also subpoena notebooks. I mean, that's why you never tear out a page or leave a page blank and that sort of thing. There's a whole thing about that. Anyway, if his times of arrival at various places and times of leaving various places and what he did and when he did it, if all of that is not forefront in his mind, he doesn't know, he can refer to his reports. And if he doesn't want to refer to his reports or they're not in the reports, well, he can refer to his notebook. And why is this not being done with this witness? Pin him down on the times. So he's saying he arrived at 2:30 and waited for quite some time for an officer to arrive. And I thought this was off. It was important to him to let the court know that he waited for some time. Well, Dighton police know they're coming, and it takes them a long time to get there because of the weather. You would think that Dighton police would have got there first or very close in time, or that Bukhenik could have picked up his cell phone and said, "Hey, I'm here." So the fact that he waited for some time for an officer to arrive captures my attention, and I want to know why that is important to this witness. There's a reason. He said he noticed that the driveway in Dighton was not plowed, and he said he trudged through the snow and it was up to his waist in places. And he saw Reed's SUV. He said he saw the damaged rear light, that there was snow caked on the taillight, and that pieces of the light were missing. Okay, where are the pictures? Did you take pictures? Because you're supposed to take pictures. If you're waiting for Dighton police, that'd be a great time to get lots of pictures of that SUV in the driveway. Are we going to see pictures? He said they went in through the garage because the Reed's front storm door wouldn't open easily because of the snow. He said an officer Burrows from Dighton police stayed outside with the SUV. Bukhenik did not see anyone touch the vehicle. He said when he went in the house, Reed was there. Her father and mother were both there. He interviewed her in the presence of her father and mother. That the tenor of the interview was polite, in normal tone. He said he was sensitive to the fact that she had just been through a horrible situation. He said they identified themselves, and that's important. He asked what happened, and he wanted her to walk through the last 24 hours. And the judge gave an instruction at this point, which is the Commonwealth must prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the accused made these statements and that they were voluntary. And in determining whether something's voluntary, you have to include things such as the accused's mental state. So here we talk about trustworthiness of a statement, reliability, and voluntariness. You can be trustworthy and still give a statement that is incorrect, and it doesn't mean you're lying. Or you could be a liar and actually give a statement that's true. And then voluntariness, and that is where there are a lot of arguments happen. Because if a witness is 3 sheets to the wind, well, they're not going to be very reliable. You might argue that it wasn't completely voluntary. Mental state, trauma, environment, all of those things impact that assessment of voluntariness. Bukhenik said that Reed said she was willing to talk and that she didn't want to go into detail about what just transpired because it was so horrible. And this is a normal thing. Some people might take this to mean, oh my gosh, she doesn't want to go into detail about what happened, so that must mean that she doesn't want to talk, or she's lying or something like that. And that's not the case. Anyone who works with people who've just undergone trauma, so therapists, counselors, social workers, doctors, nurses, police officers, y'all know that it is common for a victim or a survivor to say, I don't want to think about it. I don't want to talk about the details because it is too distressing. They don't want those images brought up in their minds again. It's just too hard sometimes. And a lot of times it has to be taken step by step by step. So this is understandable. And even Bukhenik said, yeah, it was understandable. So he'd asked her to take him through the last 24 hours. He said that she told him that she and John were in a fight in the morning of the 28th about the kids. So fight, argument could be another word. You know, it's all about framing. So I don't know what exactly she said. If she said fight, argument, and how she would define those things anyway, they had a dispute in the morning of the 28th about what the kids were eating. So this isn't some huge sort of life and death fight or argument about some major thing where she is extremely invested. She said, according to him, that she and John met at McCarthy's later. Well, you can see on the video, or you saw in the video before, that when they met at McCarthy's, they were lovey-dovey. So whatever the fight was in the morning, it wasn't enough to run into the evening. She was drinking vodka and soda. She parked on Washington Street. She said she did not bring a glass to the waterfall. She said John didn't have any injuries on him during the day or that night, and there were no physical altercations or anything that should have caused such injuries to Officer O'Keefe. All of this that she's saying is according to this officer. And again, I'm not seeing him look at notes or anything. And why was this police interview not recorded? I would think that this interview would at least be audio recorded. I could understand it not being recorded if an investigator thinks it's a small crime they're investigating, or they already have everything and it's just going to be a brief conversation, or it's a sort of peripheral witness. But this is a death investigation of a police officer, and this witness is a pretty important witness. According to Bukhenik, Reed said she dropped John off but did not see him actually enter the home. Then she made a 3-point turn. He asked her about the damage to her vehicle, and she said, I don't know, it happened last night. Well, this is an amazing memory for this trooper here to have without referring to any notes. She had her cell phone with her, and she used it, opened it to give the troopers witness contact information. She said the reason she didn't go into Fairview is because she was having stomach issues, so she didn't want to go in. So she was just going to drop John off. And according to this witness, she said while she was doing CPR, she noticed his eyes were swollen. She saw an injury to his nose, and she thought his mouth. And then there was this weird little thing that he said and corrected. First, he said he had her walk him through how she did the 3-point turn, and then he stopped and changed it to how he asked her about how she was maneuvering the vehicle when she was leaving Fairview. And that caught my attention, and I thought that was interesting. There's something there. I don't know what it is, but there's something there. He said he seized her cell phone at that time. They seized the vehicle, and they seized her cell phone. Did they already have a warrant to seize those things? And if he intended at the beginning to seize her cell phone, why does he allow her to pick it up and do anything with it to give them contact information from the phone? So it's just a little off. But you know what? Not every single thing goes exactly the same as other things. He said he saw through the window a plow truck plowing the driveway, and he saw through the window the SUV being loaded on the flatbed Well, why was he not outside taking pictures or sending Proctor out to take pictures? He hadn't taken any pictures before this, and now they're going to move it. So he should be running outside saying, hey, wait a minute. Wait, we need photos before this gets moved. So he just saw this happen through the window. He said he didn't notice any cameras at that location at that time, but he did learn later that there were cameras. So then they go through these videos. Here's one. You're going to see the SUV pulling in. So this is 2:11 p.m. on the 29th. And you see someone get out of the driver's side, and that is Reed's father. You see Reed get out. They go to the back. Now, remember that Reed had gone into the upstairs portion at John's house to collect some of her belongings. And she put those belongings in her trunk or her vehicle. So we don't know if they're going to the back of the vehicle to retrieve something. But here, Lally asked Bukhenik, what do you see them doing in this video? He says he sees two people exiting, and he says the video shows them gesturing at the light. I don't think that's what it shows. They're at the back of the vehicle together. I'm going to rewind this a bit. They go to the back of the vehicle, and to me, it doesn't look like there's any gesturing going on. You can hardly see anything. They could be talking. Maybe she's pointing to the taillight, maybe not. Who knows? And why is it that the jury is seeing a video? They have eyes, they have brains, but this trooper is narrating the video and telling them this is what they're doing in the video. You know what? The defense would not be allowed to do this. So here's a close-up view, and this is when the flatbed truck comes. Watch this. And this is 1612 by this timestamp. So they're going to load this up. Watch for the lights on the passenger side. You can't see. There. You see that? So this is amber, and it's supposed to be amber, by the way. This is not a broken piece here. This is red, like it's supposed to be. And look, here's your corner here. There is a lot of red on this light. So that photo or that video doesn't match the narrative. But you know, if you tell somebody this is what you're seeing, then very often that is what they see. Look again. It's hard to see because it's cut off. And you know what? We would have a really clear view if he had taken photographs. And look here. See? There's white and amber on the truck lights. Are they broken too? And remember, there was red and clear plastic found, allegedly, that was reconstructed. So it's not supposed to be all red. Pointing out is one thing. Hey, I call your attention over here. People, especially if they're told by multiple people a thing, or if they're told by someone in authority, will tend to believe things that are not true, even if they see it with their own eyes. Stanley Milgram did an experiment and found some interesting things. And I promise you, this is relevant to this case. In fact, it's relevant to the presentation of any case and relevant to your day-to-day life. Here's what it was. See this line here? Subjects were asked to look at this line. This is your reference line. And then out of these three lines over here, to choose which line is the same length as this reference line. And it's not even a trick question, right? So they had people say on purpose that this reference line and this giant line over here, which is obviously not the same length, they had some people say these two lines were the ones that were the correct size. And so all the participants in the study were seeing and hearing some people say this line is the same as this line. And you know what happened? They also said that this line was the same as this line, even though they could see with their own eyes it was wrong. When lawyers get mad about witnesses narrating videos and saying, this is what you're seeing, this is one of the reasons why they don't want you doing that. And keep that in mind as you watch this trial and as you watch videos. Bukhenik said he followed the tow truck from Dighton to Canton Police, and he said the vehicle was put into a heated sally port at Canton Police. And it seemed important to him to say it was heated, and I kind of wonder why it went to Canton Police. I mean, don't the state police have their own, especially considering that this vehicle has not yet been examined? Also, Canton Police had recused themselves, and Bukhenik knew this, so it would be doubly important not to leave the vehicle at the Canton Police Department. So I found this odd. They show the exterior cameras here. This is Canton Police, the entryway here. You're going to see vehicles come here. So here comes that tow truck with the SUV on it, and you're going to see vehicles drive in behind it. One vehicle. And a second vehicle. Here's my question. Whose vehicles are they? We are assuming that one of them is Trooper Bukhenik's because he said he followed the tow truck. But there's a second vehicle. Well, you might say that must be Proctor, except Bukhenik said at the beginning of his testimony that they went together in one vehicle. Is it possible that this is just a different vehicle and it has nothing to do with anything? It just happened to drive in right then? It's possible, but you know me. I ask questions. I want to know whose vehicle is that third vehicle. And by the way, this exterior video at Canton Police, according to the witness, it was 5:30 p.m. And it seemed important to him. He mentioned that the sally port was heated more than once. He said outside it was 18 degrees with winds blowing, which once again makes me question how that pieces of glass remained on the SUV. And look at here. It's heated, but look, there's snow all over the ground. And they're going to bring in a vehicle that has not been tested into this mess. I want to see how it is that they prepare to bring this vehicle in. Are they clearing and drying that floor first? Are they going to do that? Are they putting down paper? What are they doing to make sure that that's a forensically good place to keep this vehicle? And how are they going to secure this? Look at this. First of all, notice the lack of snow on this SUV. I don't see big piles of snow on the bumper, you see. Having said that, we don't have a clear view of that entire bumper. And look at all the red on this taillight. Look at that. And look at someone's getting out of the passenger side of the vehicle. See? So watch them go around back. Now there's somebody over here. Now, this is a magic camera. Because look at it's Skippy and somebody has just appeared here And Bukhenik was asked, who are all the people in the video? And he only recognized himself. So he doesn't know who they are. I don't believe him. So, okay. So guy's walking out. So somebody's removing snow here. Look at this door open. This is a busy place. And I have no idea who all these people are. If you are able to positively identify any of them, you can let me know in the comments. Look at how many people are here? 1, 2, 3, 4, at least 5. One, two, three, four. I don't know. There might be 6 there. Now, Lally has Bukhenik watch this video and says, did anyone touch the rear tail light at this time? And he says, no, they didn't. Wonder what they need a dolly for. This is one of those cases where you end up watching hours and hours and hours of surveillance video, because this here is a moment in time. And it's not the hours or even days after. Remember, evidence wasn't sent to the lab until March 14th. Why do they have a dolly over there? I guess we'll find out in a minute. Okay, so somebody says, hey, let's put up crime scene tape, because even though this is within a police sally port, people coming in and out, because this door, this pedestrian door, I believe it's this one, is used by a lot of people. Everybody has access to the pedestrian door. So the tape would alert other officers, they stay away from this vehicle. And if they have to do this sort of rudimentary thing, I mean, why would it not be taken to a state police sally port? Look at this dolly moving around here. You know, if that knocks over, that would break that tail light in a lot of pieces. Somebody in the comments pointed out that the pattern of the break doesn't seem right. There's no single point of impact. Okay, I want you to watch this. Look to on the right side of your screen. See that guy? Watch that guy. He took a photo of the front of the vehicle. Then he goes into the passenger side. I wish we could see the entire video uninterrupted. Goes to the passenger side, and did he take something out or put something in? Right? What happened there? So we're going to look again. So he's taking a picture of the front. Why is he not taking a picture of the entire thing? Goes into the vehicle. He shoves his hand in his pocket. I have no idea. Look at all these people in here. I understand why they have officers clearing the snow, but I thought this was a heated sally port. And I'm going to go back to this door opening and shutting. Sorry, I should talk in complete sentences here. I'm going to go back to the issue of the solo cups. When we saw the photos of the solo cups, we saw red liquid. But the person at the lab said that she had to thaw out the blood in the solo cups because it was frozen. Why was it frozen? Where and when did that take place? Nobody asked that. And Bukhenik has said a couple of times, it seems important to him, this sally port is heated. So why is that important? And can't be that heated because look at all the snow that they have to shovel away. If it's heated, wouldn't the snow melt? And also, the snow was in the shape of a vehicle, so it looks like there was a vehicle parked there and had been moved, and we didn't see that either. A lot of people in and out here. Anyone know who these people are? That's wild that they use an unstable dolly right at the corner of this vehicle to put up barrier tape. Bukhenik testified that there was a warrant on February 1st, 2022. So what we're looking at here is the 29th. So there's a warrant on February 1st. On February 2nd, the SUV was then taken to, I think he said Milton Police. He said the Canton Police had recused themselves. Well, he already knew that. And he said the Canton Police needed to free up their sally port. Well, they'd already processed it by February 2nd. And this is important. Do you remember that when the woman from the lab who actually processed this vehicle was led by Lally to give the date of when she processed the vehicle? And the issue was February 1st or February 2nd. Well, the fact that there was a warrant on February 1st makes it important when this was examined, because was it before or after the warrant? Also, on February 2nd, the SUV was taken elsewhere. Well, the fact of the matter is the vehicle was already processed, and we saw earlier video that this vehicle was processed in Canton Police Sallyport. So the fact that it was removed later may not be the important detail that Lally wants to have people maybe think it is. Then they show a video. They're saying it's February 2nd at 8:09 in the morning. And you know what? You can't see a flippin' thing. And I don't know if it was the cameras in the courtroom or if it was the video itself. And the other thing what Lally said when they introduced it was, this is a different angle. Well, where was this angle of that camera view for when the vehicle was brought in? And when they were showing the mechanic coming in and the crime scene person or the crime lab person coming in later, why did we not see the other angle? I mean, it looks like there's two cameras here, right? Why aren't we seeing both angles of each event? I think it says 8:09, like he said. Okay, on this clip, you can see the timestamp. You know, somehow this looks different. So this is from a different angle completely than the other video we saw. The angle would be, the angle would be this way. Interesting. I don't know. There's something wrong with the timestamp. Maybe it's my memory. Maybe my memory's wrong. It just looked different to me than these. Lally got Bukhenik to say that every investigation requires a team effort, that it's not a one-man show. And that's true. And that fact can be argued in different ways. I'll just leave it at that. He said, they don't conduct interviews with only one trooper. There are always either two troopers or a trooper and another police officer. He said that Proctor was the affiant on search warrants for the ring video that we're about to see. And on the stand, he said there are no times and dates on the videos, and he said they were presented sequentially. Well, I don't know how he could say that if there are no times and dates on them. What they requested was ring video from John O'Keefe's home from January 24th to January 30th. So this is video prior to the blizzard. And just landmark here in your mind where this vehicle is in relation to everything else. So she backs up. So she's parked in the driveway, not the garage. Daytime visibility's good. Looks like she's doing something that would be routine or not overly stressful. And you're going to see her leave and look at her taillights. Look at the pattern. You see? There's a pattern here that this is white normally. This is white and amber. Normally, this kind of shape of that red is what's normal on this vehicle. This is before this taillight was ever broken. So there she goes. We're going to see another video. And what Lally does when showing this video, he points out, hey, it's the same place, same angle as where she parked before, and the same place that she's backing out from. And the suggestion is, hey, she knows how to back out, and she hit his car maybe on purpose, or she shouldn't have hit his car. But I'm going to tell you right now that they are not in exactly the same place, and I'll show you in a minute. And we start with the fact that she's coming out of the garage. The garage, which, by the way, was found to not be able to close subsequent to this. So we don't know why yet. Whether it was snow on sensors because maybe she left it open. We don't know if she hit something inside the garage. We don't know. But watch this angle. She's coming out of the garage, not already parked on the driveway. The location, her starting point, is different. Not to mention visibility is bad, and she was stressed out. Watch. She hit that car. She's going to drive out, and look at the amount of snow on the ground. It's not really deep yet. And she's going to drive away. Watch that light. You see that? There's a little piece missing right here. I'm going to show you these two videos side by side so you can see. I tried to line up these two vehicles as best I could. So you can see that her starting point is different. First of all, one, she's already in the driveway. The visibility is different. The mental state of the driver is different. Okay, here she comes. You see? They're not. Those two vehicles did not start at the same point. There's not a lot of clearance, right? So that little bit of difference as to the starting point, it does matter. And if she's in a habit of parking there and not inside the garage, which seems to be the case, then her habit of turning the wheel, you know how sometimes you're on automatic pilot when you're driving a vehicle, it would be easy to make the mistake that she does make in the bottom video. The starting point is different, but the angle at which she maneuvers the vehicle is very similar. In fact, you could argue that the angle of this vehicle is a bigger angle than this one. I've heard people say, oh, she backed into the vehicle on purpose, and I don't believe that. He points out that there's a portion broken. I put these two close-ups side by side here. The one on the left is from the Ring camera taken before the blizzard, and the one on the right is taken after. And you can see this yellow here, right? And there's white here that is supposed to be there. Well, some of this yellow and white is gone. And this yellow here, this amber color here, is still there. That red there and here, it's all still there. There is a piece missing. It is broken there, but not to the extent of what they would have you believe, and not to the extent that the entire thing was gone. When Lally had Bukhenik look at this video, he said, after she struck the car, and he agreed that she struck O'Keefe's car, did you see any red on the ground? And he says, no. Well, this is rich. First of all, there would not be red on the ground because, as we saw yesterday, the missing piece of her taillight was clear. And all of the red pieces of taillight that they found, they purportedly found at Fairview. So there wouldn't have been red on the ground. And the other reason that this is rich is their argument has been, and it's implied, is that they didn't see all these big chunks of red taillight despite being close up and searching over and over. But now, from a ring video in the dark from a distance, they act like everybody should see any red piece on the ground, that should be visible, and the fact that it's not is evidence, therefore, that it is not there. Well, look it. You can't just change the rules to suit you or change your supposed logic to suit you as it is convenient. If red pieces should be clearly visible, then they should be clearly visible, and certainly should be clearly visible up close when professionals, multiple professionals, are searching. So if you think there should be red pieces on the ground in this video and the absence of them means something, then the absence of the red pieces at Fairview should mean the same thing, but it doesn't. It's double standard. They show video of January 29th at 12:30 in the afternoon of Reed and her father going into John's house. You also see video of Reed's brother who is clearing off the vehicles. Notice he's clearing off those windshield wipers, and he's going to go to Reed's vehicle in a second. So watch, he just clears off that part of the windshield. He doesn't clear off the whole vehicle. And I suspect that what Lally wants to show here is that if there were glass pieces on this bumper here that's covered with snow, that maybe those would have remained intact and that they weren't knocked off here, that they weren't cleared off here. Well, we don't know if this vehicle was cleared off again later, cleared off more fully, and it also drove a great distance. And when we see it towed, it arrives with no snow on it or very little snow on it. Then they go through footage at McCarthy's and they show, see, she has this tall drink beside her. And this video from McCarthy's, along with transaction receipts, were obtained by Trooper Keefe. And they go through video showing when she took a drink, when she got a shot and poured it into her glass. And there were points in all of this when I thought that what he was saying he saw wasn't what I saw on the video. Clearly, she had some drinks, and there were times when the witness pointed out, here she's taking a drink, and there were times when you could see what he was saying. It was very clear that what he was saying and what you're seeing on the video matches. But there were other times I thought, I don't think that's what we just saw. It's important to note that the timestamps on the cameras from McCarthy's were determined to be 12 minutes behind real time. I know there was a point where you can see she's drinking out of a straw, and couldn't say 100%, but the straw to me looked white or light colored, not black, like the straw they retrieved that we still don't know anything about, or at least I don't. And they went through this. They said she took a drink at 9:20. She received a drink at 9:20 p.m. She put a shot into her glass at 9:33, received another drink and another shot at 9:57. And on that one, where he says it was 9:57, it didn't look to me like she got an additional drink. It looked to me like she retrieved one that she already had. And there was a point at which everybody was doing shots and she didn't drink the shot. You could interpret, though, that maybe she dumped the shot into her glass and then drank that, because We did clearly see her do that before in these videos. But here's the danger in that. Because we saw her do it before, we can't automatically assume she did it again. In any case, it looks like everybody had a lot to drink and they were driving. And by her own admission, she was driving after drinking. So the witness said, ultimately, led by Lally, that the accused consumed or was in possession of a total of 6 drinks. And this is based on his viewing of these videos at McCarthy's. And there's a section of video here. See her, she's up here. They're saying that she walked out the door with a glass in her hand. I saw nothing in her hand. Now, that doesn't mean I'm right. Maybe there was. I don't know. But you know what? It doesn't actually matter. In the beginning of all this, I thought, oh, this glass matters. And they saw John leaving the waterfall with what appeared to be a different glass. And I thought this glass mattered a great deal, especially considering there was a drinking glass, found under John's body. They still haven't matched that glass with anything Reed or O'Keefe had. And I have a question about that glass and all the other pieces of glass there. Did they take fingerprints from those? Is that something they did and we just haven't heard about it yet? We would expect to find John's fingerprints, and we would expect to find Karen's, and perhaps a bartender's fingerprints. What we wouldn't expect to see or shouldn't see is the complete absence of fingerprints. So if a glass had been wiped. Bukhenik said he got the receipts from McCarthy's, and Karen Reed's tab was $52.80. Included on the tab was a Coors, and we know she wasn't drinking that. They did get the receipts from the waterfall along with video. They showed stills from the waterfall. So at 12:11 a.m., the victim leaving holding the shorter cocktail glass. I don't know what they're saying about this other glass. Are they going to somehow tie the glass from McCarthy's in to this? We also have never seen the entire video from the waterfall over a longer period of time. And I understand why they probably don't want to show this long thing at trial, but I always question what we didn't see. They show a still of John outside of the waterfall with the glass in his hand. They mention again they got the receipts from the waterfall. We don't hear about it. We see a clip showing John and Karen enter the waterfall at 10:54, and at 11:39, Karen having a drink, and it appears to be a shorter glass. The pieces on Karen Reed's SUV bumper did not match the drinking glass found at the scene. So this is feeling like a red herring in some respects, at least when it comes to Reed. And that was it for June 5th for Bukhenik.